We've put some questions up here, things that we thought might be the sorts of questions people want to explore. They're meant to be prompts rather than prescriptive, so please don't feel you have to address them. If they're helpful, use them. If you want to write stuff on post-its, you've got some A5 things with the little Harry Venning cartoon that you can write things in the middle if you want to feed back. The other thing that we've put into each of your individual packs are 2 postcard-sized versions of the black and white Harry Venning thing where there's a space in the middle. And what we'd like you to do is just think a little bit about whether there's something that you're going to either do or perhaps do differently as a result of the discussions that we've had today. And if you're willing to share them, to stick one up on one of the 2 whiteboards at the back. If you're willing to put your contact details or your name on them, we'll follow up with you and see whether you've been able to do them or whether there's things we can do to support you. And if you want to take a copy away as a reminder of what it is you're going to do, that's why you've got 2. But you don't have to share them or put your name on them if you're not happy to. So if we give you about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll just have a plenary for 10-15 minutes at the end just to share from that and think about how we might take some of this forward in the region over the next 6 months or year. Does that sound all right? Anyone got any questions before I let you get going? Okay, so we'll give you till about 25 to 15-20 minutes. Brilliant, thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to get some feedback on the exercise at the beginning and just take some kind of general questions. Feedback from the day, if anybody wants to kind of go through any of the particular question. We are going to pick on table by table though, because I think it is important. Make sure that we've asked everybody if they want feedback. Just because I know this table at the right hand side, can we start there? Anything that you want to feedback in terms of the questions that we asked, or any interesting points that you want to say now?
You were talking about
yes. We're talking about something completely different.
Well, one thing I would really like to see out of today is not that it's not just a talking shop, but that things actually happen. I know I was at a meeting a couple of years ago, and it went on and on and on. And at the end, the woman who was a carer stood up and said, "I'm up to here with person-centred planning. Can we, for God's sake, have some person-centred doing?"
It's a very good point. Anything else from that table?
We were talking about how a lot of what we talked about is how people feel that like don't have the right to say anything to professionals, and especially like medical professionals. So we're saying like a lot of what we take away from today is having that challenge to be able to say no, I want it like this, and having that, getting that social work input for general sort of life decisions really.
Okay. One of the things that's kind of struck me since I've moved across to Bradford, and it struck me in my old local authority in Calderdale, is just how infrequently we share space with people that we're here to support, social workers. It's kind of one of the challenges I think back to us that I heard from somebody this morning was about can we start sharing some space that actually we'll only kind of begin to broker the power dynamic if we're seen as genuinely working in partnership with people. And when we think about working in partnership with people, we tend to think of colleagues, and we share the same desks, and we share the same space, and we have those professional conversations. So maybe that's something that we might want to look at in Bradford, is actually how do we start sharing the space?
I agree with you there. We're from Bradford People First, and we do invite social workers to our forums on a regular basis. We've not had many come along, so it's getting that. And I know it's just possibly a bit short of time. It's actually finding that time to come along and just chat to people. Because it's one of the things that's occurred to me is quite often social workers get involved with people when there's an issue or when there's a problem, and they don't see people on that sort of ordinary everyday things, which is what that person's trying to get to most of the time.
Yeah.
But it's actually seeing what's the ideal state for this person to be in.
I think, thanks for that. I think in Cumbria, I've just had a conversation with David at the back actually. I'm work for Cumbria County Council, but on the social work teaching partnership, which we're in with Lancaster University. And we've just had a conversation about having students going on placement to places like People First. First year, second and final year students And the conversation we've had was a really positive one, because personally I think that's a really good placement for a student social worker, because they're involved in that day-to-day work with service users, which they might not get if they go on a frontline social work placement. We're lucky in Cumbria that we've got that partnership with the university, and we're trying to develop those links with more placements like that to give the students at the first point in their social work career that experience, so they then take that forward into teams.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to take another table, Hannah? Wherever you choose, you pick up people this time. So. Is that Cumbria?
No,
North West.
Right, don't go to them.
No worries if not, that's absolutely fine.
We wondered what was going to happen with all the information that we've been gathering today. Who's going to get to know about it? We're from Cumbria. Who's going to share it with Cumbria? And when will we know what they're going to do with it?
That's a question for me, I think. You'll see we've had filming, we've got PowerPoint, we're going to get all of that on a website, lots of links to the existing named social worker pilot, what we've learned, we've got some information back about what we've been doing already. We're hoping that the pilot will roll forward, and an element of that, particularly for us at Lancaster, will be sharing that learning with the region. We're working in partnership with Matthew as part of the teaching partnership, specifically with Cumbria, but opening it up to our partners in the region. So yeah, it might take a little bit of time to get it all up online, but the videos, the information, the links, and as much as we can kind of put on that brings it to one place, click to one page and follow that through.
Hannah, just to say that we have put in a special of interest to be named a social worker pilot at Bradford. We're still waiting for the outcome of that. But I think what we could say is that given our mutual relationship with Lancaster University, although we're not part of the teaching partnership, that if Bradford is successful, we can quite like to have another one of these events, or continue to talk to colleagues in Cumbria about where we could get some shared learning, because we were talking earlier about some of the things that we picked up earlier from social workers from Cumbria. So there's no reason why we can't, if we are a successful pilot site, kind of go forward with this, or indeed, or if Cumbria have applied.
I don't think we have. But in terms of, particularly from the Cumbria point of view, Kath, because we're in this partnership, we will have a unique opportunity to link in with Hannah really, and my background in LD means that I'm passionate about getting CPD opportunities for LD social workers in Cumbria, separate from the CPD opportunities that we're going to have for more generic social workers and children's.
I just wanted to say, it's really, really positive that we wanted to try and generate those opportunities. But I think one of the things that I think we do need to do in disabilities is we need to get the qualified ways sometimes within the world like generic sort of working, which is what a lot of things have gone back to. We last couple of years we've gone back into a specialist team. Because we're small numbers and the team is relatively small across our division, it's really being able to have that, the capacity to be able to work with individuals in a way that is more creative, innovative, and not necessarily getting involved in a crisis. And I think it really would be useful for this kind of event to perhaps steer, the direction and travel really with the learning disabilities.
And I think again the learning is part of what we're trying to do in the learning hubs as well, because I think getting practitioners to work in that way is all about upskilling the practitioners to do that, getting the knowledge base brought up, getting research and practice into frontline practice, getting evidence-based practice into frontline practice. And the learning hubs that we're rolling out across the county are about that really. They're not a requirement for these big days that are time consuming, and we know there's a workload commitment. But it's about getting practitioners upskilled so that we can do all those things that you've just mentioned.
We were very interested with fellow students, very interested about the time it would take to build the relationships for a better social worker. We'd like to know how organisations are going to implement the time it takes to build the relationships with the clients needed.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's no kind of easy answer to it, because it's extremely difficult. One of the things that we talked about earlier, we talked about some of the work that we've done at previous local authority to move social workers into a shop and begin that kind of relational social work, is that we had to start off with having some really honest conversations with social workers, and we had to have some really honest conversations about what adult social work, what we felt at that time adult social work had become, and that we were talking about it had become the brokerage role, and that we were assessing the lives out of people and support plan. One of the challenges back to the social workers was we don't think that that's social work, the brokerage. We think that that might be a tool kind of that you use, maybe you don't. We think social work is the relationship stuff. Are you prepared to ditch the brokerage? And that's a conversation that's also been outside with Ruth Allen and Basworth about a challenge going up to the wider social work community. Are we prepared as adult social workers to accept that experts by experience might be better support planners? That we might not be able to assess people accurately because we're given a 10-minute snapshot in somebody's 50-year history, and actually they might be better to self-assess assess themselves. And are we prepared to actually pick up the baton in relational social work? And one of the things that I would say is that most social workers are prepared to go back to social work and reject some of the case management. But some aren't, and we have this challenge all the time that actually there is some trappings, in my opinion, that come with care management. It's quite easy, I think, for social workers to have including myself, you can have a career in adult care management, adult social work, where you're doing assessments and you're doing support plans and you're doing reviews forevermore. Actually, it's quite challenging to say to those social workers, let's close this awful building down, let's properly go back to community social work, put yourself in the heart of a shop that backs onto a market where you'll have some difficult people coming in, asking difficult questions, and start to build up some relationships with people. I think that's a real challenge back to the profession. But the answer comes from within the profession. I genuinely believe we've got to be the ones. I think sometimes we're waiting in social work for our managers to fix it up for us, or elect politicians or whoever. And actually my experience for kind of 20 years in social work, 25 years in social care, it always comes, in my experience, from the grassroots. It's when people that were here to serve and social workers get together and put the challenge back to local authorities and to the NHS and to the CCG that things genuinely change. So I think it's within our gift. I know it's frustrating working for local authorities because it feels like nothing ever changes and the management doesn't change this and that. They never will if you don't make a noise. And I think social workers have got to, locally, within their own local authorities, have got to make a noise that it's not acceptable. Some of the stuff that we heard on the video this afternoon, that's not acceptable, and we need to say social work is not in our name. That's my opinion.
We were named social workers working within specialisms, and my background was LD. And then the pressures came economically that you had to close cases, very quick throughput, and you were split into functions. You either did access and intake, or you did safeguarding. You know, gone was the time when we knew our service users and the people we were working with, and we built relationships with them, and we worked in a preventative model by low-level monitoring, if you like, maybe a phone call every couple of weeks or 3 weeks to find out how they're doing. What I'm asking is, I understand about skills training for students and for social workers to go back to that model, but perhaps we need to look more at skills training and knowledge training for managers in the Treasury who do the economics, because on a cost-benefit analysis, surely it's got to be better to have a social worker who's named, who knows that service user, who's worked with them and their family for a long period of time, than it is to do this crisis intervention and throw money at it at the point of burning. So perhaps it's management and the Treasury that we need to be re-educating.
Come on, Carrie Gray, you've always got something to say.
I think today it's not actually just a psychologist. So thank you very much for having me today. I think what I'm going away with are that, as ever, stories are really, really powerful, and I think the more stories that we tell, the better, because I think by everybody kind of tuning into those stories, hopefully things can start to change. I think for me today, it's gone back to the very basic thing, which is relationships are the core and foundations of everything we do. And I've just been really struck by how similar the kind of value base is between social work and also psychology. In fact, obviously, I think it was Chloe that put up the thing earlier with definition of social work. I'm just thinking, take social work out of the clinical psychology areas there. And having worked locally for many, many years in the learning disability services as a clinical psychologist, I think for me, when I've worked best, and my colleagues in health work best with our social work colleagues, is when we've actually shared a base. And I would say that actually, again, I think it's so important, that having that shared space, having that opportunity to just kind of do those informal networking things. I would say the best work we've done is when we've been together, and I would really advocate for that. Thank you.
Just have to look at your favourite issue comes to look down at the issue.
I think I pick up on the comment that was made over there. We started our conversation really thinking about the last case study, and no matter how much we do in terms of challenging and raising the profile of social workers, people's day-to-day experience will often be dependent on the quality of the carers, and those carers were not empowered. How you manage to have carers who are trained, who are skilled, who are empowered to speak up on the sort of wages and with the sort of training that they have, I think is a huge challenge. And it seems to me over the last decade, and I've been doing care management, sorry Rob, for 25 years, over the last decade, the only thing we talked about is the cost of anything. And we just stripped and stripped and stripped, and then we're surprised that care is so poor.
We reckon that one thing that might help is having a learning disability law similar to the autism bill. So, for example, the autism bill is legal. It's a law that has to be followed, not necessarily followed correctly, but it has to be followed. And if we have a learning disability law exactly the same, we might just get better treatment.
Okay.
So we, on our table, were discussing better social work, and we were looking at the questions on the board, and we noticed that the first question says, what stops learning disabled people living the lives they want? Now the prefix learning disabled before people is actually quite labelling, and is a barrier in itself, and that sort of labelling excludes people with learning disabilities within society. For example, thank you Rob for being an example, you wouldn't say irritable bowel syndrome, Rob, would you? No? There you go. Not that I know that, So it's sort of going back to the basics, and another question that was sort of highlighted when we were discussing was, how can we help self-advocates? Now, it needs to be rephrased, that question, how can self-advocates help us? As a social worker, working alongside self-advocates, they're in the heart of society, they know far more than we do, there was something else I was going to say, sorry. As a social worker, that sort of question, how can we help self-advocates, puts the power in a social worker's hands. Now, I really don't believe in empowerment, I believe in enablement, and that social workers enable self-advocates, for example, to demonstrate their own power, because they are independent, they know what issues are in society, and they know the best way to deal with those problems.
Thanks, Callum. Just to say, it's not IBS, it's a metabolism issue.
I think our thinking was, how can universities, other organisations support self-advocates, particularly collectively? What resources can we bring to you? We're really interested at the university. We're not overwhelmed with resources and money, but what we do want to do is build relationships and think about how we can support self-advocates, particularly when they organise collectively as people first, as other organisations. So another question.
Just to carry on, I'm not a social worker either, I'm work in education. But I feel that we need to empower and to support people to be aware of what good support and good social work looks like. Because if kids are moving there, so if somebody doesn't get the support they need, at least they'll recognise it and hopefully do something about it. So empower people to know what good looks like and work together in co-development.
Thank you. Chris.
I work in university, I guess. I spent a lot of time thinking about health services and people with learning disabilities. I always used to think that we had to try and devise systems that were people-proof because, about training people, making skills better, making systems work better. I think actually now it's the opposite. We need to grow more and more people, social workers and other people who are systems-proof. It's the people that make the difference, and we just need more and more people. We need to flood our services that support people with people who really understand, who really get the curiosity, who really care, who really give it to us.
Okay. I just want to let Robin Matthews decide last. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I know coming for a full day is a pressure, so it means a lot that you've found the time to do that. We're really keen to keep this conversation going. We're fingers crossed, hopefully involved in the next pilot, which will give us some additional resource to be able to keep talking, listening and developing support for better social work in the region. So there'll be an email in the next week or two when the website with all the different cartoons and videos and capturing what you've been saying today. If you've got ideas and things you want to email me afterwards, please do, and we can continue to collect those and continue to talk to us at the university about how we can support this conversation, how we can help better social work in our region. Thank you very much.